Hello, welcome to the LawyerFair Daily Podcast. Now, anyone who follows these podcasts on a regular basis, and I know there's one or two of you out there, will know that we've been focusing a series of our conversations around the subject of selling a business. And you may also be aware that I've been involved personally, both as a participant and as an advisor in this market space. So it's a real, I have a real passion about it and a real passion about business owners getting the right result. And so we launched this service I launched this series by trumpeting the importance of how you select your advisors and making sure that you select experts and what I refer to as not to instruct dabblers. So it's a real pleasure to invite today someone who I really is genuinely a deal expert, having been the founder of BCMS, who are a leading corporate deals firm. But welcome, Dave Rebbettes.
Good morning, welcome.
Thank you very much for joining us, Dave. Dave is, as I say, a co-founder of BCMS. Just give me a little bit more background about who BCMS are and what you do.
Sure, Andrew. We've been established since 1989, and we focus on the sale of private companies. Typically, I suppose those companies would range from a turnover anything from 1 to 2 million up to 100 to 150 million, with the sweet spot being somewhere between 3 million and 20 million, perhaps.
Okay, and I'm looking at your website, Dave, and seeing the map of the world. That looks a bit like the old British Empire, frankly. You seem to have BCMS colours in certainly almost every continent. It really is a worldwide operation now.
Well, I hope it doesn't go the way of the old British Empire, but we're active in about 24 countries around the world with head offices here in the UK.
Yeah, well, if anybody's listening to this and wants to kind of look at the site, it's bcmscorporate.com. Is that right, Dave?
That's right,
yeah,
correct.
Yeah. I know there are different US versions, etc., but that's the site. Listen, thanks again for joining us, Dave. I think we've already chatted, or I've brought up the issue of making sure you instruct experts. And I think one of the key things that I have in mind is that businesses must. It's not only about building up the value of your business, but it's also about protecting it through the process, which we'll come to. But building up the value of the business is often down to the preparation. And I'd be interested in your thoughts. From the very first seed of a thought of selling a business, what business owners should be thinking about.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about preparation, isn't there? One of the most recent companies that we sold, a company called TEW Engineering, we met the owner 6 years ago and suggested to him that then was not the right time, but there was some preparation needed, and we put a plan into place and sold them just a few months ago at a real premium price. So there are always issues, and we do need to be ready for what's coming our way. Here's an interesting thing about selling a company that you'll know full well, is that there is no such thing as a good surprise. Every surprise you get at the late stages of a deal will always be a bad one. So therefore, preparation is really, really important, as you can imagine. For us, we focus on, in the late stages, we focus on a number of areas. First of all, strong documentation. Future plans, what the business could look like under new ownership, not what it used to look like under past ownership, and preparation for the coming negotiations as well. Our deal leaders are very, very experienced, but we don't want to drive any deal through without our client sat next to us. And therefore, our client must be ready for the questions that are going to come their way, and obviously that's a critical issue.
Well, you've hit on three interesting areas there. I mean, if I can just go into deeper, and the future plans, Dave, I always think is a really interesting one, and I'm pleased you've raised it as a kind of key pillar of the process that you do. And I don't know exactly how you operate, so this isn't a staged bit of feedback, but it is a really interesting pillar, because my view is always that buyers are always going to be picking and choosing. Going to be a little bit picky about your business as it stands. In a sense, you kind of want them to, because you want them to see the value that they can add as well, and that's synergy.
Right.
But one of the great selling points is there's no one who knows the business better than the vendor. And if you can sell that strategic vision, if you can almost give them a strategy document and say, look, if I was starting again, this is what I'd do. I just think that's a huge piece of value. And I'm assuming in future plans, that's essentially what you do, is it?
Yeah, I mean, most people go to market with a prospectus. And that's clearly important. But by far, the most important document we ever produce is what we call a synergy business plan. And what we do here is we produce a plan that says, like, if the current owners retained the business and chose to invest in its growth, this is what it could look like over the next few years. But then we mold that around every potential purchaser, and we say, look, if you purchase this company with your resources applied, and we make very, very modest assumptions in all of these plans, we think that the business might look like this. And the truth is that when you sell a company, you should never sell what it looked like last year under your past ownership. Never sell what it will look like this year under current ownership, or even in 2 or 3 years' time under current ownership. The only thing you should ever sell is what the company would look like in 2 or 3 years' time if that new business owned the company with all of their fresh resources being applied. Now, the truth is, of course, that traditional valuation focuses almost entirely on past performance of current owners and doesn't even consider future potential under new owners.
Well, you're moving into an area of some contention in terms of valuations and asking prices, God forbid. Why would you put an asking price on a business? But anyway, let's not go into that into too much detail. But I know that you've alluded there to how BCMS operates. But what's your view generally on the value of valuations, or at least the way that valuations are traditionally done on businesses?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you're right. Never, ever take a company to market with the value attached. It will almost certainly be the most expensive mistake you can make in your life. And for many people, it will have been, no doubt. So
and Dave, sorry, you're going to explain more. I was just going to say, can you explain a bit more about why you think that?
Well, it's a little bit like saying car for sale for £3,000 or nearest offer. Well, guess what you're not going to get? You know, we sold a company relatively recently that was involved in waste management, and the business had been valued at £5 million. We identified several hundred buyers, but we got down to only 8 that we were prepared to invite to make an offer. And the lowest offer came in at $3 million. So it was, you know, they were trying it on a little bit. And the company was eventually purchased for $19.1 million. Now, the company that purchased them for 19.1 was the same company that some months earlier, put in the lowest offer of 3 million, but eventually found themselves having to outbid everybody else and pay 19.1 million. We could give you hundreds of such stories from the last 20 years. And it just drives us to this conclusion: there must be more to valuation than simply multiples of past profit. And the one thing that you must consider, and the only thing that draws that value out, is if you have a choice of buyers. You need competitive environment in the process of selling a company.
And would you say that's the core? Clearly not the only thing that BCMS, but would you say that's a core value add that you bring, is finding those strategic buyers?
Yeah, it's the only thing that gives you a negotiation position later on. So almost everything that we do here at BCMS, and typically we will go through 3 or 4 months worth of preparation with a client. We then enter a strong period of research, identifying hundreds of buyers from not just the UK but all over the world. Then approaching those buyers, introducing the germ of an idea to them. It is almost all about ensuring that in the end we have a competitive situation, more than one buyer.
Dave, let me ask you then. You mentioned good surprises. There is no such thing as a good surprise, and again, the closer you get to that completion date, the less you want to find a little surprise emerging. Are there kind of consistent surprises that emerge from your experience? Are there things that a vendor or perhaps their advisors that aren't you might not have spotted, which can regularly trip up a deal?
We have become pretty good now at preparing for these issues. So we take our clients through 26 areas of their business and try and assess what's coming our way. But they could be a whole host of things. I think the main thing that we're looking for are skeletons in the closet of some sort. Stuff that the current owner does not want to talk about because he knows there's dirty linen to be aired. Because the truth is, such things will come out. and we need to discover them early and manage those things early should they be present. And they could be all sorts of things. So we clearly look at the obvious stuff, the commercial, the financial issues within the company. We look at owner aspirations. And one of the big deal killers is if owners are expecting too much for their business. Now, we have a very strong process, and we achieve very, very strong premium prices for our clients. So we don't mind it if our clients have got strong aspirations, but we really dislike it if they've got totally unreasonable aspirations. So there's a whole variety of things that we look through. And I think
it's an interesting point, because I think that from the buyer's perspective, I think one of the great frustrations from buyers, particularly the smaller end of the business sale market, is vendor expectation. And there are some very reasonable buyers out there who sometimes can't get deals across the line because those expectations are unrealistic. And I think the other element about it, Dave, from my experience, and you may concur or not with this, is that it's not only expectations about headline price; it's about structure. So if you're too embedded in the business and you haven't been able to extricate yourself from the core management, then you're going to be required to stay for a period of time. Those kind of elements to a deal that sometimes vendors will overlook. And again, I suspect that's part of your kind of preparation charter,
Correct.
Isn't it, of making them aware of that.
I mean, the truth is that most new owners don't want the old owners around for too long, and I can really understand that. But if you are deeply entrenched in the business, then the reality is you're going to be around for a bit. Now, it doesn't necessarily affect the saleability of the company, but it does mean that you've got to be ready to stick around for a year or two while you hand over the relationships or the expertise to somebody else, of course.
Well, that's great, Dave. And just kind of final thoughts, really. What's the average lead time, just so you can, again, the expectations of a vendor? What's the average lead time of a business going through with BCMS from the that first phone call to completion? Is there an average that you could?
Yes, but we've got an average from taking on a new client, that is with no buyer in sight, hasn't really thought about a sale until today. It takes us about 10 or 11 months to sell a company, typically. Now, it can be shorter than that, it can be longer than that, obviously, but our average is between 10 and 11 months.
Okay, so within the 12 months, you generally expect to get the business over the line.
You need to think 12 months ahead, really.
Yeah, no, I got it. And of course, I suppose in a sense, maybe even a little bit of thought ahead of that in terms of actually shaping the business and getting it ready, but that's a separate conversation.
We always prefer it if we talk potential clients, a few years ahead.
Absolutely. Sure. Well, that example you gave us at the beginning was illustration of that, wasn't it? 6 years. Listen, Dave, it's very kind of you to join us. I know that, do you still do your kind of road shows? Do you still do your presentations?
Yeah, we do about 140, 150 seminars every year up and down, throughout around the world, and we do probably 50 here in the UK. So you can see them on our website. They're a half day, and where we really change the thinking of our industry, or have done over the years quite heavily. So they're a little bit contrarian, and our views are a little bit unusual, a little bit different, but highly educational.
Well, I've come across BCMS many times, professionally and personally, and I have to say I support and back up the way that you operate, and certainly particularly around the issue of pricing and finding a strategic buyer, because I think not having a price on your business and finding that strategic buyer are two very, very important value enhancing elements to what you do. Right, so I think Dave, you've been a star. Thank you for joining us. I can't believe we've actually gone already 12 or 13 minutes on this. Let me just repeat again if anybody's interested. We will put this on the podcast. But it's bcmscorporate.com. And as Dave mentioned there are about 50 seminars around the country. I mean, you're almost literally from John O'Groats to Land's End, aren't you, Dave, with some of these?
Yes, pretty much.
So and they're free, so do get in touch with BCMS. Dave, thanks again. All the best. I know you were a little bit poorly last week, so thank you for joining us.
Andrew, thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
Not at all. That was the LawyerFair Daily Podcast. Thank you for listening. There will be more again tomorrow.